nuclear deal is barely dry, and President Rouhani is already in the midst of a European tour with hopes of strengthening economic ties and pursuing a range of business deals to get money and goods into the country. Should Americans be worried, though, that some of that money could get funneled to terror activities? Joining us on set right now is Senator Ron Johnson. He is the chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. And, Senator, the lead story in the Wall Street Journal is all about the billions of dollars in business that Rouhani is getting from Europe right now. Last week, we spoke with Secretary of State John Kerry. He said some of that money very likely will be funded into terrorist activities. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. You know, let's face it, Iran is widely recognized as the largest state sponsor of terror. They're our self-proclaimed enemy. I would think the strategy ought to be to weaken our enemy, not strengthen us. So I think it's a crazy deal to enter into an agreement that doesn't guarantee that they'll never get a nuclear weapon and that is going to inject tens and eventually hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy and military of a self-proclaimed enemy. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
The argument at the time was that this deal with the Europeans was going to go ahead with or without us. The Europeans were not going to stand pat on the sanctions anymore, and at least this way we could get some sort of maneuvering.
I think the Europeans saw we were going to capitulate on that deal. That President Obama was so dead set on doing that deal, they thought, man, let's join the party. So again, to me, it just makes no sense whatsoever. And I know President Obama was also hoping that there would be a change, a modification in Iran's behavior for the better. They modified their behavior for the worse. It's emboldened them. So we've seen them in, contrary to UN resolutions, they've testified ballistic missiles. They've lobbed some rockets close to the U.S. Harry Truman. They detained and humiliated American sailors. That's not better behavior.
The other piece in the journal is there's three defense contractors missing. Right now.
That's the other thing. When you start training for hostages, you're going to increase the chances of people going to take.
Just have it. It says the disappearance of 3 U.S. citizens just recently, posing a fresh test of the Obama administration's relationship with Iran, and they know that they're somehow associated. They get funding from the Revolutionary Guard that guys are talking about. So
no, what we've seen is because of this agreement, the beginning, if not the fait accompli of the strategic realignment in the Middle East, and Iran has really basically succeeded in that Shia crescent. And from my standpoint, I don't think that's a good thing for either regional peace in the Middle East or for world security.
What's the recidivism rate that you use for the Gitmo guys we're letting go?
It's certainly a factor.
Is it 30? They say it's 10. And other people say it's 50.
Well, I mean, we had hundreds there. When President Bush left office, really they were pretty well evaluated as high risk, and
none of them should.
Well, and so they keep reclassifying these folks, and that's a real danger. So exactly what it is, I mean, there's literally hundreds. It sounds like a couple hundred that are probably rejoined the battle or want to rejoin the battle.
So we give them the rights to make sure that we're not violating habeas corpus, and then once they go back and join the fight, then we try to hit them with drones and kill them.
It makes no sense. And listen, I've been down to Gitmo. It's a first-class facility. That's why I think one of those prisoners refused to be extradited. He wanted to stay there. If we're going to combat,
send that to Huffington Post. Senator Ron Johnson said most of these guys would like to stay.
I didn't say most. I said there was one that was just reported. He didn't want to leave.
They'll print that.
Well, whatever. The fact of the matter is, our first line of defense against Islamic terror is an effective intelligence gathering capability, detaining terrorists, and then over time questioning them. I was down there. That's how you actually get the intelligence. Over time, gaining their trust. Then they start spilling the beans. We're not doing that anymore. So we are really reducing the human intelligence that we're going to need to keep this nation safe.
There is a new threat that some experts have been warning is potentially even more dangerous than ISIS. We haven't heard much about this at all, but Jabhat al-Nusra, which is the al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria, do you know much about this?
Well, they're one of those groups, which is one of the reasons Syria is such a mess. I mean, who do you side with? Right. And again, I'll go back to the historic blunder of not leaving a stabilizing force behind in Iraq, which would have helped stabilize that region. But again, that Humpty Dumpty's, he fell off the wall, it's all broken. I don't know how you put that back together.
What do you know about, you know anything about the FBI in indicting Hillary Clinton? Do you know whether that's a possibility?
I know I talked to James Comey. He was testified before our committee on our threat hearing. And, my point to him was, you have got to get to the bottom. You've got to uncover every email that was ever on that server, because we have to assume our enemies have all that information to find out.
You saw the video yesterday that Fox News was running from someone that absolutely knew that BlackBerries were not the way to do this.
Yeah, I read about it. I didn't see the video. But no, this is obvious what Secretary Clinton was doing. She was trying to evade any kind of disclosure, the FOIA request. We've seen that elsewhere in the administration as well. Just really trying to circumvent circumvent the Federal Records Act and FOIA requests, and that's what she was doing. And she put America's national security and potentially lives at risk because this classified information on that private server, we have to assume our enemies have that. So we've got to find out every one of those so we can mitigate the damage.
So how does it work? He gives it to Justice, and then Loretta Lynch has to act on it, right?
Well, again, I'm not exactly. I think he's a person of integrity. I think he understands his responsibility here. Comey. And so, if he sees that there have been a potential crime committed, I think it's his obligation.
Doesn't mean they pursue it.
He would at that point recommend indictment, and then who knows what. I have a hard time thinking President Obama would let Loretta Lynch actually indict her.
Right.
I got to ask you a business question.
Sure.
Johnson Controls.
Yep.
From your very state, fleeing the country. What do you think?
It's just math, and that's from the mouth of a Democrat colleague on our Senate hearing PSI where we really explored this issue. It's just math. We have got to stand up a competitive tax system. If companies.
So when are you going to fix it?
We should. Well, we need a president to actually understand that we've got to make our tax system competitive. By the way, our regulatory environment competitive as well. We actually have President Obama. I was encouraged by this. In State of the Union, one of the loudest applause line he got was for regulatory reform. So we've got a package of about 5 different regulation bills. I hope he supports
both sides talking about that they need to fix this problem. We have some of the biggest American companies on the runway ready to leave here.
Not all the Democrats want to cut taxes on the corporations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's both sides. It's your fault.
The problem is President Obama, in order for any tax reform, first thing is you got to have $1 trillion of tax increase on the table. And that's not going to be good for economic growth either. So if we actually had a president who was willing to lead, understood what made an economy grow, and it's not punishing success, it's actually incentivizing it. And take a look at just the basic math.
Independently, you have no problem with this.
No,
I'm curious, just because you've given huge tax breaks to this company, right, over the years?
I haven't given huge tax breaks to anybody.
Your state has.
This really doesn't change much because they will still pay U.S. tax and Wisconsin tax on their U.S. operations. And by the way, because of our uncompetitive tax system, those overseas profits aren't taxed anyway.
Would you include
They're theoretically taxed.
Would you include any type of exit tax?
What do you mean by exit tax?
Hillary Clinton, for example.
In terms of penalizing them for doing this.
Yeah.
Listen, if they didn't invert, you know what's going to happen? They're going to be purchased by a foreign company. That's the effect of this thing. So they either invert, they actually buy a foreign company and then invert, or a foreign corporation will buy them because it's math. $150 million is what they're going to save. Mm-hmm. If you're a responsible corporate manager, how can you not take that type of move? So I don't blame the corporations. I blame our completely uncompetitive and broken tax system.
All right, thanks, Senator.
Senator, thank you for coming in.
Johnson & Johnson.
He's a hard guy to convince.